Hey, what's up everyone? Phoenix Furniture Restorations here. Welcome to my YouTube channel and my very first YouTube video. I got this dresser from Facebook Marketplace, and the individual that I bought this from said that this dresser was actually in his family for 2 generations. It was actually a bit of a surprise because on the Facebook Marketplace ad, I thought it was actually one piece for $250. It was actually 3 pieces for $250, all from the same set. Now, what you're looking at here is the drawer faces, which I believe are quarter sawn oak, and the top and the sides are a maple veneer. You got these really cool drawer dividers too, which I love, and this brass hardware, which is going to shine so beautifully once I polish it. Just a look inside the drawers here, and there's a bunch of missing trim all around this piece, which I have to fix. But luckily, the previous owner actually kept most of the trim, so I'm in luck there. Now, these bottom 2 drawers down here, they were sticking pretty bad. Now, mind you, these pieces have been sitting around without use for quite some time. I'm not surprised that the drawers are sticking a bit, honestly, because depending on where this piece was stored, wood loves to expand and contract, especially if it was stored in a place where the humidity is high. It's really easy for wood to become warped or cupped. And you can see there I had the piece of extra trim that was saved. But unfortunately, on this side, this piece was nowhere to be found. What's really catching my eye about this piece is the detail that was put into it. There's so much detail in the trim work, in those 2 drawers right there in the front. Overall, I'm just so excited to get working on this piece, but I definitely have my work cut out for me. So with all that being said, sit back, relax, and enjoy this transformation. Alright, so starting out here, I'm just going to be removing all the hardware. And this hardware was rough. It was extremely tarnished and almost black. And yeah, they were just really gross. I'm not surprised though, due to the age of this piece. Tarnish is expected, but it can always be cleaned up using the right products. Here, I'm just taking a solo cup and labeling it dresser number 1 to put all my hardware in, because with my luck, I'll probably lose the hardware within like the first hour. And if you're wondering about all the tools behind me on the wall, I actually work out of my dad's workshop on our property. I started doing this actually in our garage and graduated to my dad's shop, which he was more than willing to share. And if you take a look inside the drawers, they're actually in pretty good shape. There's not much I really need to do to them other than give them a nice sanding and apply some new shellac, which will seal them up and give them a nice warm glow. There's other products you can use too to seal up the insides of the drawers. Howard Feed and Wax or hemp oil are 2 good examples. But for this project, I'm just going to be using shellac, just preference. So now I'm just giving this a really good cleaning because this piece is filthy. I'm using MCS Cleaner Degreaser, which will get rid of all the grease and grime and dirt that's been caked up on this thing for however many years. And you could see there how gross and filthy this piece was. It's really important that you do this step because if you don't, when you go to sand, you'll be grinding all of that dirt and debris down into the wood fibers, and it can affect how your stain takes, or even your finish that you're putting on may not adhere the right way. So it's very, very important not to skip this step. Even though I don't show it because it'll make this video way too long, I cleaned inside the drawers, I cleaned inside the frame of the piece, I cleaned pretty much every square inch that I could. And once it's all clean, I'm coming in with my carbide scraper. This is a great tool for removing finishes, and it's probably my preferred method of removing a finish. But if you could see here, it's actually not working that well. Normally it would be taking off the width of the blade, but since the blade is pretty dull here, it's only taking off a small narrow portion of it. So I'm gonna have to change my blade. So here I'm just unscrewing the blade from the pallet, finding a freshly sharpened edge, and turning it around, making sure that blade is nice and sharp, and screwing it back on. I know this tool may be a little intimidating at first. I know I was a little intimidated by it, but it really just takes a little bit of practice, and before you know it, you'll get the hang of it. It's really not that hard. Alright, so back to scraping. So I'm sure you could see now that it's scraping a lot better. You could see that it's taking off almost all the material after each pass, which is exactly what you want to see. Some people like to wear noise-canceling headphones or just listen to music when they're doing this, because this thing can be so loud, it's almost like nails on a chalkboard, and can really kind of hurt your ears after a while. So now, because this is a two-tiered dresser, I have to take the drawers out to be able to get inside and unscrew the top from the bottom. And this drawer right here, I don't know what was going on with it, but it was really stuck. I tried both hardware holes with the screwdriver to try to pull it out, but eventually I actually had to pry it open with the screwdriver and finally got it out. Now I'm just taking out this last drawer on top, and these drawers have some beautiful veneers on them. I'm pretty sure it's quarter sawn oak, but I could be wrong. So now just taking a look inside the carcass here, and you can see this is screwed on. But before I take this top tier off, I'm gonna have to take that back panel off, because those back screws I'm not going to be able to get to with the back panel in the way. So now with a mallet, I am gently tapping the back panel to remove it. And don't worry, this isn't going to break anything. I'm just gently tapping to loosen up those nails. This is a solid piece of wood for the back, and I knew it could handle it. Once the back panel is off, I have access to all of the screws, and I can begin unscrewing the top tier from the bottom tier. Now I'm just taking off that top tier, and I can begin work on the bottom tier. And you can see on this bottom piece right here, the wood that was underneath the top tier is completely unfinished. And by that I mean it's just raw wood. This is actually pretty common when pieces are getting manufactured, for the undersides or insides of pieces to be completely unfinished. My guess is that it probably saves on time and material when they're manufacturing these pieces, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm just pulling out this random nail that was sticking out of the corner so I could keep scraping. And once I'm done scraping this top, I'm just going to give it a quick hit with a vacuum to get rid of all the debris before I start sanding. And to sand, I'm going to bring in my Surf Prep sander, which does an incredible job sanding. And as you can see, I'm starting with a 180 grit, which will be more than enough to cut through the remaining finish. Now this is wood filler that I'm going to begin to apply to the top, and this does a great job of filling in scratches or gouge marks And the best part is this stuff is actually stainable, so when I come in and apply my stain, it'll blend right in and you'll never even know it was there. So with wood filler, you really want to pack it into those gouges and scratch marks and then just flatten and even it out. And back to sanding the top tier. Now for anybody who's new to sanding and is watching this to maybe get some tips or tricks, when sanding you really want to keep the sander flat and you don't want to apply too much pressure. You want to apply just a little bit, but you really want to let the sander do all the work. And another tip would be when using a sander, you really want to go slow. You don't want to move too fast for the sander, otherwise you'll probably get some of those swirl marks, which are really not fun to get out. Alright, so after the two tops have been lightly sanded, there are some stains that I'm just not able to get out with sanding, because if I keep sanding, I'll go right through that veneer and I don't want to do that. So oxalic acid is the way to go. Oxalic acid is basically a wood bleach. It comes in powder crystal form, and I just pour some into hot water and keep mixing it up until it stops absorbing. Just adding some more here. Gonna give it a little mix. And you can see in a second that when I pull the brush up, there's still some oxalic acid left there. That's what I'm looking for. So now I'm simply going to be brushing on the oxalic acid. Now you want to make sure that you're covering your entire surface with this. If you have a stain on the top, you don't want to apply it just to the stain. You want to cover the entire surface with this product. If you only apply it to the stained area, that's the only part that's going to lighten and it's just going to look weird. After you apply your oxalic acid, you want to let it completely dry before thoroughly wiping it off with water. And you're going to want to wipe it off with water at least 2 to 3 times. So as the oxalic acid is drying, I'm going to begin scraping down the drawers. And just another little tip, while scraping down on edges, you really want to make sure that you're going very gentle along the edge because it's very easy to gouge. It's all really muscle memory, practice makes perfect. Also, when you're scraping, you really want to make sure that you're going with the grain. I actually had to go against the grain very gently on certain points because of the tight space that I was in, but it's highly, highly recommended that you do not go against the grain. Alright, now it's time to rinse off the oxalic acid. I'm just using a wet shop towel here. And as I'm applying the warm water, you can start to get a sense of how beautiful this veneer is. For each wipe down, you also want to make sure that you're using a fresh shop towel. This way you're actually removing the oxalic acid and not just spreading it around with a dirty rag. After rinsing a couple of times and making sure that it's completely dry, I'm coming in with a 220 grit sanding pad. Since I'm staining this piece, there really is no need for me to go any higher than that, because the higher the grit that you sand to, the less stain will actually adhere. And in this shot, I'm just doing the pencil trick, which basically you just take a pencil and make a bunch of light marks. And what this is going to do is, as I sand over the pencil lines, as the pencil lines disappear, I know I've sanded enough. This is going to prevent me from sanding too much or too little. And I just repeated the same steps for the top tier. There was a bunch of missing veneer on the back of the top tier, so I'm just filling that in with some wood filler. Normally I would probably make a veneer patch, but they were so small that I figured wood filler would be best. And this little piece of veneer was hanging on for dear life, so I decided to glue it back down. And I'm just applying some tape here to hold it down in place and to apply some pressure to it. And now I'm sanding down the drawers with 180 grit. Now it's time to start scraping down the rest of the piece. It really felt like I was scraping for days. You'll see that the top tier here is wobbling all over the place. It's just because I didn't have it clamped down, but I learned my lesson pretty quick. I'm using some wood glue here because the veneer on the side was peeling a bit, and I wanted to make sure that no more veneer tore off this piece. and just clamping that down to make sure that there's even pressure so it dries correctly. And just gluing up this extra piece of veneer that tore off before. And I'm just wiping off some extra glue with a damp towel and taping it up. And back to scraping. The sides on this piece were so sun bleached. My guess is that the previous owner probably kept this by a big window, allowing the sun to just eat away at that finish. It's good news for me though, because this actually makes the finish a lot easier to take off. I'm using my surf prep here to start sanding the sides with, I believe it was in 180 grit, and I'm going to be finishing with a 220 grit. I'm just using a 220 grit here on the top to smooth out all that wood filler that I put on before. And as I was sanding the side over here, you could see a little piece cracked off, but that's okay. I'll just go in with some wood filler again and fill it in. Alright, so for these drawers I had to use paint stripper because there was way too much intricate detail on these drawers to sand. It would have been a nightmare. And right off the bat, I have to admit, I made a huge mistake. Every time you use this stuff, you must wear gloves. You're going to see that I put gloves on in a second, but I was so busy trying to set up the camera that I forgot, and you really do not want to do that. This stuff is extremely toxic. It'll eat through almost anything, so you don't want that on your hands. After scrubbing with a stripper pad for a little bit and getting in all those grooves, I took some acetone to wash off the residue. I know a lot of people usually use mineral spirits to wipe up the stripper gunk, but for some reason, acetone for me just works a lot better. Also, if you're going to be using paint stripper and acetone, you want to make sure that your area is extremely well ventilated, and you definitely want to use a respirator. And you can see here, I actually tried to sand with my surf prep with a sanding sponge, but the details were just too intricate. It did a pretty good job, but there was still a little bit remaining along the edges, which is where stripper is going to come in so handy. Now these decorative edges and all the little decorative bits were definitely a challenge. Trying to get in between all those cracks and all those little hard to reach places were very time consuming. But in the end, perseverance pays off, and I was pretty satisfied with the results. Just smoothing out my second round of wood filler here, getting the tops ready for stain. Now this is a foam pad, a foam sanding pad from Surf Prep. It's unbelievable for contour sanding and all those hard to reach corners and areas that you would normally have to hand sand to get to. Even though this sander is amazing at getting in all those small areas, I still did have to hand sand a little bit just to get in those really, really tiny spots. And I just wanted to state for the record, I'm not being sponsored by Surf Prep or anyone else. I just love this sander. I've tried many sanders, and for me, this just does the best job. I'm just filling in some cracks and scratches now on the bottom drawer with the wood filler. I would have used a veneer patch, but I had no veneer that looked anything close to what I had on the drawers. So wood filler it is. These drawers are coming out so beautifully. I'm so happy with how this is turning out. So now I'm starting to strip off the finish from all the decorative bits. And of course, in my haste, I forgot to put on my respirator. But thank goodness, I'm working in a space that's extremely well ventilated. I have the door open right behind me with fresh air coming in. I got fans blowing, but it's really no excuse not to be wearing a respirator. You really, really want to wear a respirator when you're using paint stripper, guys. So now I'm just flipping this over on its back so I can get that to feet and strip those. Here I'm just sanding the inside of the carcass, making sure that I get the guides and the runners so that the drawers no longer stick and operate smoothly. Also remember, you definitely want to change your sandpaper every now and then, probably more often than not, because a lot of the times you get this buildup of stuff that will actually prevent your sandpaper from doing what it's supposed to do, and it won't sand. So just make sure you're always checking and changing your sandpaper. I have to take a short break because somebody's feeling very neglected. Her name is Peyton, and here she comes. She is 9 years old. She was a rescue, and she has been the greatest gift to our family since day one. Let's see that one more time. All right, back to work. So I have to apologize here. Unfortunately, the clip that had me staining this piece, there was an error in it, and I couldn't upload it. So I won't be showing you the staining process in this video. Next video, definitely, but this video, unfortunately, no. So I recruited my dad to come help me polish up these beautiful brass hardware. And as you can see, he has a bunch of different products that he's going to be using to polish these to a beautiful shine. First up is Barkeeper's Friend, which he's going to be using to get all the dirt and grime off. And next up, as you can see, is Brasso, which is going to bring out the luster and get rid of any final tarnish or debris that's left over. You can already see that beautiful luster start to come through. And in the next step, we're going to be using McGuire's compound, which is going to bring this up to a whole nother level. He applies the compound with his finger sparingly and uses a Dremel with a cloth wheel to buff it in. And the final step here is adding a dab of McGuire's yellow wax, which will clean off any residue from the compound and protect the brass. Typically, if your hardware wasn't as tarnished as this one was, you can get away with just using Barkeeper's Friend and Brasso and still get pretty good results. But with these, they were so tarnished we had to go the extra steps to get the desired results. And the difference is night and day. Look how beautiful that is, oh my god. Alright, now it's time for the finish. For the finish, I'm going to be using Odie's oil, which is one of my favorite finishes to use. Odie's oil is a hard wax oil finish that is a blend of natural oils and waxes that is designed to penetrate and protect the wood from the inside out. It doesn't just sit on the wood on top like a film finish. It penetrates deep into the wood fibers, creating a durable and resilient finish. I'm just cracking open a new jar here. And one thing I really like about Odie's oil is that it's completely non-toxic. You can apply this stuff with no gloves. It's food safe, so you can use it on cutting boards and things like that. And plus, it just smells amazing. So I'm just showing you here, when you open up a new jar, it's very thick, almost like solid state honey. You want to mix this really, really good until it's more like liquid honey and get all those ingredients mixed together. And now it's ready to apply. I'm applying this with a 1500 grit Merkur Milan pad, slowly working it into the wood grain using circular motions. And remember, with this stuff, a little goes a very, very long way. So all of this that I just put on here right now, that's going to do the entire top of this piece. And now finally the part I've been waiting for, putting this on the drawers. They're so beautiful. And yeah, by the way, this stuff is a major workout for your arms. And remember, we still have to buff this off, so there's a lot more work to come. So normally you leave the Odies on for about an hour to 2 hours before you begin the buffing process. And when I say buffing, I mean buffing it all off. You have to get all of the oil off, otherwise it's not going to be a good finish. And just a quick shout out to Angie at Transcend Furniture Gallery. I learned this trick from her, among many others. If you wipe your fingers across the surface and streaks are left, you know you haven't taken enough oil off. You have to keep buffing until all of that oil is off. And here's the hardware all polished and buffed and ready to be installed. And remember that one drawer that I didn't have the piece of trim for? Well, you guessed it, I recruited my good old dad. It may or may not have been against his will, but he's here. So as you can see, he's just forming a straight edge line as a guide to know where to put the quick wood, which is a wood epoxy, almost like adult Play-Doh. It's a two-part epoxy that you have to mold in between your fingers until it's one solid color, and then you just mold it into whatever shape you're trying to create. Just remember, you only have about a 15-minute window to work with this before it starts to set and get hard. It fully cures between an hour and an hour and a half before it's ready for sanding and painting. You can use a bunch of different tools to mold, shape, and form the epoxy into whatever shape you want. I think it came out pretty good. What do you guys think? And last but not least, it's time just to do some color touch-up work. I'm using these Blend-All sticks, which are basically adult crayons, and Mohawk's brush tip graining markers. Now with this, I'm doing layer by layer. I'm starting with lighter colors first, and then going over it with some clear lacquer to seal in that color work. And then I'm going in with a darker color to match the veneer. One really important thing to note here is that the Odie's oil is completely dry. It's been drying for a couple days now, so putting lacquer over the Odie's oil is no big deal. And you can see right there's one little chip that I actually forgot to fill, but don't worry, I went back and filled it before the final reveal. Now these are Mohawk's brush tip graining markers, which are amazing for making faux grain lines. And I'm just gonna draw a few lines and then wipe it back on my finger to make it look more natural, like it's an extension of the grain itself. And that's really it. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it for you. This is truly my passion. I absolutely love doing this. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe. I'm a new channel, so it'll really help me out. So without further ado, enjoy the reveal.